I'll be reading from Acts chapter 9, verses 36 through 42. Now there was in Joppa a disciple named Tabitha, which translated means Dorcas. She was full of good works and acts of charity. In those days she became ill and died, and when they had washed her, they laid her in an upper room. Since Lydda was near Joppa, the disciples, hearing that Peter was there, sent 2 men to him, urging him, "Please come to us without delay." So Peter rose and went with them. And when he arrived, they took him to the upper room. All the widows stood beside him, weeping and showing tunics and other garments that Dorcas made while she was still with them. But Peter put them all outside and knelt down and prayed. And turning to the body, he said, "Tabitha, arise." And she opened her eyes, and when she saw Peter, she sat up. And he gave her his hand and raised her up. Then, calling the saints and widows, he presented her alive. And it became known throughout all Joppa, and many believed in the Lord.
Morning. Okay, go ahead and open up your Bibles to Acts chapter 9, verse 36. The story of Tabitha is going to be our text for today. My ESV says Dorcas restored to life. That's what the heading is on there. I don't know if you have a note. I've got a little note in my Bible that points me to the bottom. And it says something about this name in verse 36. It says, "There was in Joppa a disciple named Tabitha," which translated means Dorcas. So the note at the very bottom of my page of the Bible says that Tabitha means gazelle. So in either Aramaic or Hebrew, her Jewish name, the word for gazelle is going to be Tabitha. But Luke and Acts is writing to a more Gentile focused audience. And so what is the word for gazelle in that language? Dorcas. So it's like a translation kind of thing there. I say all of that just to say, above verse 36, where it says Dorcas restored to life, I assume that she went by Tabitha. That's her native name. That's what her family and her friends would have called her. So I just do a little cross out on the heading there, Tabitha restored to life, and I'm going to refer to her as Tabitha. As we go through this lesson, the point is going to be something like, hey, let's all try to be Tabithas. Also, it seems a little bit nicer to say, Max, would you rather be called a Tabitha or a Dorcas? It's kind of a no-win situation. Like, you're going to call me a girl's name or a dork. So let's do Tabitha. I won't call you Tabitha, though. If we're shooting for Tabitha, that's what I'm looking for. The thing that I want to do this morning at the very start here, starting in verse 36, let's just talk about 3 things. I've got some different versions of the Bible up here so that we can try and bring each of these things to life. There's 3 things on this that I'm focusing on. Verse 36. There was in Joppa a disciple named Tabitha, which translated means Dorcas. She was full of good works and acts of charity. That's the sentence that I want to focus on for just a minute. Let's think, number 1, about this is a woman who has good works. Some of the different ways that you're going to see this, like whichever one registers the most with you. Obviously, good works registered the most with you because you started us with a Hebrew passage. I've got the same Hebrews passage in my notes this morning to think about good works. And so you're like, hey, this is a woman with good works. Deeds of kindness, that one sounds a lot like something that I could register. Like, I can understand that one and say, here is a woman who was a person who did kind things. That seems pretty good. The NIV says that she was always doing good. That's a pretty good one. Doing good deeds on this one. I want to go over to a couple different passages. Go ahead and stick your marker here in Acts chapter 9. I want to look at a couple places. This list that I'm going to give you right now is not by any stretch all of the places in the New Testament where you can find the words good works together in one spot. But I just want to look at a couple of them just to get a sense of what we're doing here. Ephesians chapter 2 and verse 10 says that, I guess we should start in verse 8. Ephesians 2 and verse 8 says, "By grace you have been saved through faith. This is not of your own doing. It is the gift of God, not as a result of works, so that no one may boast." Every time I come to this passage, I talk about salvation. We're not saved by good works, but we are saved for good works. So you can see the for good works in verse 10. We're saved for, we are his workmanship, created in Christ Jesus for good works, which God prepared beforehand that we should walk in them. So we're thinking about Tabitha, who is doing the things that she's supposed to be doing. We're not saved by our good works. We've been saved for good works. And here is Tabitha, a woman who is full of good works. She's doing the stuff that she's supposed to be doing. I also think it would be worth our time to look over at 1 Timothy chapter 2. This is not a woman-only situation. There's lots of passages in the New Testament where you find the good works word, and it's a reference to all Christians, like Ephesians 2. That's a reference to all Christians. But if you come over to 1 Timothy chapter 2 and verses 9 and 10, we start in verse 9. It says, "This is what women are supposed to be doing. Likewise also women should adorn themselves in respectable apparel with modesty and self-control, not with braided hair and gold or pearls or costly attire, but with what is proper for women who profess godliness with good works." So this text is saying, hey, listen, those of you who want to be a woman of God, you don't dress yourself up in fancy clothes so that people look at you and say, wow, look at that woman. If you're a woman of God, you dress yourself in good works so that when people look at you, they say, that's a woman of God. She's dressed and clothed in good works. And the reason why I want to come to that passage especially is because that's Tabitha. She is described at the very start of her description, the way that we say, let me tell you something about Tabitha. She is a woman clothed with good works. That's good. That's something that we want. And then Ryan already read it. I'm not going to turn over then to Hebrews chapter 10 and verse 24. This is what we're supposed to be doing as a body of God's people. Let us consider how to stir up one another to love and good works. And so, part of our Christianity, part of what we're seeking to accomplish this morning. We come together to worship God and to sing praises to God. And in Bible class and in lessons, we're learning about who God is and what God is like so that we are being stirred up to be people full of good works like Tabitha. That's the goal of why we're here this morning. So number one, she is a woman full of good works. Number two, second thing listed about her in the ESV, it says that she did acts of charity. Look down at the NIV. The NIV says that she is a woman who helped the poor. I want to do this. Go over to Matthew chapter 6 with me. You see the same word in Matthew chapter 6, and this is a really interesting one, and it's very useful, I think, for what we're looking at. If you are writing notes next to this point number 2, that Tabitha was a woman who helped the poor, who did acts of charity. That word, especially throughout Acts, probably, I don't know if I can say this for sure or not. In the New Testament, though, you're going to see it in the ESV as alms a lot. Acts of charity is alms. It's the exact same word that we're talking about here. I really like this one. In Matthew chapter 6 and verse 3, in my Bible software, sometimes I'm like, acts of charity, right click. I want to see this word everywhere else in the New Testament. And check this out. Matthew chapter 6 and verse 3 says, "But when you give to the needy, do not let your left hand know what your right hand is doing." This word that Tabitha did acts of charity is the exact same word as giving to the needy. Same word. That's what, and so it gives you a sense of this is what she was like. This is the kind of thing that she did. Since you're in Matthew chapter 6, jump down to verse 4. There's another one here. In verse 4, it says, so that your giving may be in secret, and your Father who sees in secret will reward you. The word giving is there. So give to the needy and giving. Tabitha was a giving person. And then there's a third thing that I want to point you to with this. So she's a woman who is clothed with good works. She's a woman who is characterized by acts of charity or giving to the poor. Number 3 kind of goes with numbers 1 and 2, but number 3 is separate, and we're just going to say this. And she did a lot of it. So it's not like, hey, here's a woman who did a good thing one time. You know what I'm saying? Like I think the ESV, I like the language to say that she's full of good works and full of acts of charity. I like that language, but it doesn't get the sense across. The New American Standard does this, that she was abounding with deeds of kindness and charity, and then the New American Standard is going to be like, no, I need to make sure you get the point. And it's going to finish by saying, which she continually did. Like, this is the kind of person that she did. The NIV, she was always doing good and helping the poor. The Net Bible, she was continually doing all these things. So 3 things about Tabitha here. She did good works, she did acts of charity, and she did a lot of both. She was continually doing all of those things. And then there's one more thing that I want to see in this text before we get to some of the takeaways for this section. The last thing is that it is very clear from this story that this woman meant a lot to her church family. It's not like she was a casual acquaintance and it's like, hey, how's it going? Nice to meet you. She was a part of this thing, and her church family deeply cared for her and loved her. I just want to look at, I think if you look through the whole story, you can see that that's true. But let's start in verse 36. There's something that I did on Google Maps that kind of helped bring this to life for me. It says, there was in Joppa, got it? She lives in Joppa, a disciple named Tabitha, which translated means Dorcas. She was full of good works and acts of charity. In those days, she became ill and died. And when they had washed her, they laid her in an upper room. Verse 38, since Lydda was near Joppa, the disciples, hearing that Peter was there, sent 2 men to him, saying, and urged him, please come to us without delay. So we're in Joppa, Lydda's close by, Tabitha gets sick and dies, and they say, Sawyer, we need you and somebody else to run down to Lydda, because that's where Peter is, and get him and bring him back, because Tabitha has got sick and died. So here's something this is why I pick on you right now. Your house is exactly 10 miles from here, the church building. Did you know that? On Google Maps it is anyway. It's exactly 10 miles. Which if you look up the distance between Joppa and Lydda, you're going to get something that says between 10 and 11 miles, right? So Tabitha's here. She got sick and died. And we heard that Peter is at your house 10 miles away. Sawyer, grab Mason, and you guys run down to your house real quick and get Peter and bring him back. But there's no cars, right? This is not hop in your car. This is, you guys start jogging, because this is kind of urgent right now, all the way home to the Wise's house. Most of us, I assume, have been there, where they have everybody over all the time. And so it's like, hey, we're all 2 people. Hey, this is really important. 2 of you, take a jog down. And then, after you get there, get Peter and come back. That's not a little thing, right? Do you see what I'm talking about? That's not a, hey, even like, hey, Dave, can you run home and grab something for me real quick? That still would be a lot to ask, but less. Run 10 miles, grab Peter, and then come back? I think what you're seeing in this situation is that this woman meant something to this group of people. And if you look at verse 39, it says, so Peter rose and went with them. I don't know if it's because he knew her and she meant something to him too, or if Peter was like, wow, this woman meant something to these two guys who came to get me. I'm going to go. You can compare it a little bit to the Cornelius story. When Cornelius sent people to get Peter, they came and they talked to Peter, and Peter was like, okay, let's stay the night and we'll get up and go in the morning. This time the two guys got there and Peter said, let's go. All of this is just to point to this one truth, that this woman meant something to this group of people. So let's talk about this real quick. 2 lessons from Tabitha. Number 1, I'll throw it up there and we're going to be here for just a little bit talking about this one. If you're going to take something from this lesson, I want it to be this. Well, I guess it depends on who you are and like what is the thing that you need the most this morning. But I would assume that most of us could probably look at this point and say, yeah, this is something that I can take from this lesson. I think it's worth considering and focusing on and thinking about that I want to be somebody to this congregation who means a lot to the church family, who could be considered a Tabitha, who, when somebody looks at you, you say, that person was full and abounding with good works and acts of charity, and that person very clearly meant something to this church family. I want to say something about this just at the very start, because I think it's just natural. Like, this is just a natural thing to happen. I always default to Ed. Ed meant a lot to a lot of us. That's one of the reasons why I defaulted, is just because when I say, hey, let's talk about Ed for a second, everybody's like, oh yeah, like I understand that part, talking about Ed. He meant a lot to me. There's so many things that I could tell you about, like, personally. One of my favorites, Becky threw me under the bus at our church family Thanksgiving that one year. And so it's not really a secret anymore. But there were several years ago where things were difficult and hard, and I tried to quit lots of times. Like, more than one times I tried to quit. And I always tried to quit with Ed. And it's kind of like when Becky tried to break up with me a couple times whenever we were dating, and my response was, that's cute, but we're not doing that. That's kind of what Ed did for me. And so I look at Ed and I'm like, hey, part of the reason why I am what I am and I do what I do is because he wouldn't let me stop when I tried multiple times. And then, listen, this is not the point of this lesson, but it's just to make the point. If you ever come over to our house and you look at the refrigerator, there's pictures of Luke and Lily and Olivia riding horses on our refrigerator. And I want to tell you some of the reason why that picture is on our refrigerator. Because on that Sunday when we were leaving, Ed jogged out the parking lot to grab me on my way out and handed me $500. We were going to go on vacation that next day. And this is something, I think most of you will get this one too. He handed it to me, and he didn't let go, and he's like, I'm going to tell you something right now with this. Because he knows what I'm like and what I'm going to do. He said, this money is not money for you to save. This money is for you to spend and do something fun with your family. And so we paid for that horseback trip, and it's like, okay, that's on our wall right there. And I got all my notes. He meant a lot to me. He meant a lot to us. He did a lot for our church family. I don't remember if I told this story or not, but I like this one. We had a business meeting one Sunday. We had 2 songbooks. Remember we had the old songbooks where the bindings were falling off and the black songbooks where the pages were falling out. And somebody said, hey, maybe we should get some new songbooks that aren't falling apart. And it's a business meeting, so nothing ever happens. It's just like, oh, you're going to say something and this is the end of it. And then it was like a week and a half later, Ed called me and he said, there's a bunch of songbooks on my porch at home. Come over and pick them up and put them in the chairs and don't ever tell anybody where you got them. And that's the songbooks that we have under our seat. That's what I'm talking about. Like a man, you want to talk about Ed? Ask Jake. Just do it. Like you'll hear what it's like. All of that, I spent way too much time because I think it's kind of the opposite of the point that I'm trying to make is, all of that is just to say this. When you talk about someone like Ed, you say, yeah, got it. He meant a lot to all of us. That's true. But here's the thing about Tabitha. You don't have to be Ed to mean a lot to your church family. You don't have to be Peter, who was one of the apostles, and it's like, go get Peter right now. And he comes and he does a miracle and brings her back to life. And we're like, oh, Peter just did that thing. You don't have to do that to mean a lot to your church family. Tabitha, look at a couple of examples here that I want to show you. Verse 36, one of the things that she did was acts of charity. Jump down to verse 39. So Peter arose and went with them, and when he arrived, they took him to the upper room. All the widows, who were the people who were standing next to Tabitha after she had died. It said, all the widows stood beside him, weeping and showing tunics and other garments that Dorcas made while she was with them. Now I'm going to tell you, I'm going to take a little bit of liberty with the text here because I don't know if this is exactly what's happening in verse 39. But if she is a woman who is full of doing acts of charity, who are people who in the Bible habitually are the recipients of acts of charity? The widows, right? And one of the things that she does is she makes these clothes for these women. And here she is dead, and the widows are crying around her, and Peter shows up. And I don't know if this is the way the scene looked or not, but I can imagine that they're like, you see this shirt that I'm wearing right now? Tabitha made that for me. And then another one's like, yeah, these clothes that I'm wearing right now, Tabitha. And all the widows are like, she just did so much for all of us all the time. And then you jump down to verse 41, there's even more. It says, Peter brings her back to life in verse 41. He gave her his hand and raised her up, then calling the saints and the widows, he presented her alive. It's like, hey, everybody, come here and see Tabitha. She's alive. And it's like, hey, everybody, and you widows, come and see this woman. All of it is just to kind of make this point. She was somebody who meant a lot. I got a quote from a commentary. It seems clear that Tabitha had a rather specialized ongoing ministry to these poor women. And she was somebody who meant a lot to this church family. So, I sent out an email last week. And I said, I'm going to talk about Tabitha this morning. And I would like for you to give me examples of Tabithas in your life. And I'm not going to read. This is my collection of all of those different things, but I ended up with 4 pages. I just took your texts and your emails, and I pasted them in. I got 4 pages of things that you said. One of the most encouraging things that I've done in a long time. I left that project thinking, I wish that I could share like this. I wish that we all could share this on a regular basis. But people helping you roof your house, people helping you shovel dirt, all hands on deck whenever I needed help, people helping you to move, money. Money. There's lots of money. When I needed, somebody gave me this. When I was down, somebody gave me this. There's lots of money. There's lots of clothes. I've been that. I told you that story before. Here's some clothes. I'm going to give you some nice clothes. Lots of food. Whenever meals are constantly provided for those who are sick, recovering from surgery, new babies. I think Lena, I think this one was yours. You said we didn't buy food for a month in the hospital with Lincoln. A whole month. Presents. My favorite one, the first one that I got, my favorite one, I said something about it on Facebook. You can read it if you want, the exact same thing, but somebody who notices. It's like, hey, tell me about the Tabitha in your life. Boom, here's a response really fast. Here is this woman, and this is the thing about her. She notices. She sees people. I got one that talked about how Mark cries. Not even surprised about that. I said I was going to tease you on that one, but hospital visits and stays. Showing up, lots of showing up. Whenever we have a teen study or somebody who says, hey, we're going to do the thing that we did last week, the Morrises are like, we'll watch all your kids. And then Tracy shows up to help. It's for the teens, but Tracy, like, always there, no matter what. It's just constant. Like, there's this constant list of what it looks like to be a Tabitha. And the main thing there's three things that I want to say about this, on this main point right here. Number one, you don't have to be Ed to be Tabitha, right? You can be somebody who does good works and acts of charity and means something to the people in this congregation. Every single one of us has that ability. And I would like to think that you would say, hey, that's a pretty good goal. I'd like to be somebody who means something to the church family. I probably should just end with that because that's the nice and motivating, like, yeah, we like to talk about that. There's two other things, though, that are not so nice that go along with this point. And I'm not just trying to be a jerk about it, but I think it's true for most of us. We could look back at life and we could say, here was somebody who worshiped with us and was a part of this church family, and they left. Maybe they left because they moved, or maybe they left because they were mad, or for whatever reason, they left, and nobody missed them. It's like, oh, they've been gone for 3 months, and I didn't even realize. That's real depressing. That's depressing to think about, that you could be a part of a church family and take off and you'd never be missed. I mean, that's the opposite of what we're shooting for here. You know what the even worse situation than that one is? To be somebody who leaves and the church family says we're better off. We didn't need all of this strife and the trouble and the stress and the drama and all the nonsense that came with this person. I'm not trying to just take it into a dark place, but I'm just saying, hey, let's be Tabitha and let's not be any of these other things. Let's go back to Matthew chapter 5. Just 2 more passages and then we'll wrap this up. Ryan, how many songs do you have after this?
We'll just do the one after the invitation.
Okay. Matthew chapter 5 in verse 16. Point number 2 on this one is we are Tabitha and we act like Tabitha and we try to be somebody who means a lot to our church family because of our love for God and his people, not for the purpose of being seen as somebody who is full of good works and acts of charity. You know what I'm talking about here? There's a difference between the person who is this and does these things versus the person who does it and it's like, hey, not to toot my own horn, but everybody needs to know that I did this over here. Acts chapter 5 and verse 16 points us to this in the same way. Let your light shine before others so that they may see your good works. And then here's the thing. And give glory to your Father who is in heaven. The result of good works is to make it so that God is ultimately glorified. You come over, since we're in Matthew 5, turn the page, Matthew 6. Jesus had a ton to say about this conversation. Starting in verse 1, beware of practicing your righteousness before other people in order to be seen by them. For then you will have no reward from your Father who is in heaven. But when you give to the needy, this is what Tabitha did. When you give to the needy, sound no trumpet before you, as the hypocrites in the synagogue and the streets, that they may be praised by others. So the thing that you'll notice about Tabitha in Acts chapter 9 is that it was other people singing her praises, not her telling you about all the reasons why she should be praised. Those are different. If you just keep moving through Matthew chapter 6, when you pray, you don't do it to be seen by others. In verse 16, when you fast, you don't do it in order to be seen by others. This is a major part of our text. I think that you can see just a piece of this here. I'm back in Acts chapter 9 right now. Peter arrives in verse 39. Peter rose and went with them. And when he arrived, they took him to the upper room. All the widows stood beside him, weeping and showing tunics and other garments that Dorcas had made while she was with them. But Peter put them all outside. I'm about ready to bring a woman back to life who was dead, and Peter's response is, everybody get out. We're not going to make a scene out of this. It would be really easy to turn that into something that's about Peter. But he says, everybody leave. And then you'll notice even more in verse 40. Peter put them all outside, and he knelt down, and he prayed. And turning to the body, he said, Tabitha, arise. And so you all need to leave. We're going to do this thing. Go ahead and leave. But he prays because it's not me doing it. It's God doing it. You see, if you jump back to chapter 9 and verse 34, there was a man who was healed earlier. And this is what Peter said to him. Peter said to him in verse 34, Aeneas, Jesus Christ heals you. Rise and make your bed. And immediately he rose. And so the constant theme of this passage is, yeah, let's do a whole lesson and talk about Tabitha. And let's all be the kind of people who are Tabitha and useful and good and giving. And we mean something to our church family. But also let's be careful not to be people who toot our horns about it and say, hey, look at me. Because that's not what any of this is about. I wrote something down in my notes here. I'm not sure that this is one of those things that's like a gospel truth. I mean, this is what Jesus said in Matthew chapter 6. But I would throw it out there just as a, hey, listen. If you're going to be somebody who toots your horns about your good works and your acts of charity, you're better off just not doing them at all. From a gospel point of view. Because that's not what it's about. It's about pointing people to God, glorifying God, not ourselves. Two things from Tabitha. Number one, be somebody who means a lot to your church family. Everybody can do it. You don't have to be awesome and big and special. Just be somebody who is a part of it and means a lot to your church family. That's great. That's what we want. Number 2, make sure that God gets the glory. Make sure that you remember what this is really about, to point all praise and glory and honor to him, because he's the one who deserves all the praise and the glory and the honor. If you're here this morning and you're not a Christian, at the end of every lesson, we offer an invitation. I think this invitation is especially, I was thinking about, what's this invitation going to sound like? Sometimes it's like, okay, the lesson's over. Do you want to become a Christian? Now we're going to stand and sing. But sometimes it just kind of flows into the natural thing, and I think this one is flowing. When we talk about becoming a Christian, we talk about handing your life over to Jesus. I'm going to put my faith in him. I'm going to repent of my sins. I'm going to die to myself, be buried in the waters of baptism. When I come up out of that watery grave, I'm going to walk in newness of life. Part of what that means, dying to myself, walking in newness of life, part of what that means is to be Tabitha and to live like Tabitha from this day forward. Some of you have been Christians for a long time, and you're not Tabitha, and it's time to say, okay, today I'm going to start trying to be more of a Tabitha to this church. Some of you are not Christians, and I know you know what you need to do, and maybe it's time that you start thinking about it. And part of what you're thinking is, hey, I'm going to be somebody who is a part of this family of God's people, and I'm going to be useful to them, and I'm going to be somebody who means something to this group. If we can help you with that, come forward and let us know as we stand and sing the invitation song.